morning, Lakshmi. The theme that we want to discuss today is the theme of volatility and the actions that different corporations have taken around governance in this age of volatility. Last 4 years have seen tremendous increase in volatility, be it in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, on the political front with Arab Spring, and also on the economic and policy front, both internally as well as in our target markets. What this period of volatility has done to many corporations is it has made them more cautious in their outlook around growth while trying to manage the risks around this volatility and the uncertainty that is coming with it. Cognizant stands out in this period of being a company that has set the benchmarks for growth in spite of the increasing volatility in this period. And hence, what I would want to start our conversation with is hearing your thoughts about how do you retain that passion and that outlook towards aggressive benchmark growth in a sector in spite of the increasing volatility on multiple fronts in the external environment.
I think for Cognizant, growth is the passion. That's what drives us as a company. In terms of volatility, I think companies in the technology sector are a little better positioned because volatility on the business front, particularly the technology volatility, is very, very high. Every so often the technology changes and the companies have to gear themselves to operate and to be relevant in that kind of a volatile environment. Of course, in the last 3-4 years, things have become a little more complex because in addition to the technology volatility that we have talked about, there is also uncertainty around markets, uncertainty around institutions, uncertainty around some basic things that we had taken care of. I mean, we had taken for granted. For example, in the context of globalization, it was assumed that free movement of capital, free movement of commodities, free movement of talent, free movement of data, free movement of people, etc. will continue, and if anything will increase and the restrictions will keep coming down. Whereas during the period of volatility, we found that in some areas restrictions were put back. We were afraid that protectionism will come in place, etc., etc. So one of the things that we always think about when it comes to growth is, if we have to continue to grow, we have to take control of as many things as possible, not be dependent on the entire external environment. How do we internalize some of these risk factors? How do we manage them better and not really leave it to the outside world to determine? And that's something that we did during the last 3 or 4 years. For example, when we had the financial sector crisis, when nobody knew what was going to happen, which are the institutions that are going to survive, we put our head down and with the customers that we were working with, we said, we are going to partner with you come what may for years and years to come, immaterial of your financial situation, immaterial of your ability to pay us in the short term, but let's focus on solving this problem. One thing that we just kind of took charge of and came out winning as far as the financial services sector is concerned. Likewise, when there was so much uncertainty about the healthcare sector, where we are a dominant player, again, we doubled up our investment during the time that there was a lot of discussion about new standards, about new ways of doing things, and about the new technology that was being implemented. So when it comes to business and markets, we believe we have the ability, that extra drive and that adrenaline to push our investments and drive growth. And the second thing that happened during that usually happens around these volatile periods is protectionism. People, our customers, our markets would say, no, this is not something that I want to outsource at this point in time because of the unemployment crisis that I faced now. I do not want that many people coming in and working, put visa restrictions and things of that nature. Again, the way we went about countering that is perfectly all right for you. Whatever you are taking a decision to make sure that your business is successful, if in the short term or medium term you think that this is the way to go about doing it, by all means, we are going to help you get there. If you want to take away certain things that are happening outside, we'll bring it in-house. We will increase the employment, not by just us hiring your people, but also help you hire people and build a strong businesses. So the model of partnership is something that helped, and to alleviate some of the other fears that longer term we may not be able to make our people mobile globally. So we invested heavily in connecting up our offices and increasing the bandwidth and connection to our customers so that we can work with all the people in real time. We spent over $40 million in our teleconferencing facilities that today is the backbone for all the communication that happens, not just between our offices globally, but with our customers. And that to some extent has de-risked the inability to move from place to place or inability for our people to go from one place to the other. And the last point that I want to mention is to stay ahead of the curve as far as the technology volatility is concerned. Technology volatility will clearly impact businesses. New technology, companies will have to invest in that and transform themselves. We launched this Future of Work program. We were one of the earliest, I think, to see that virtualization is happening at a breakneck speed. The new millennials, the new workforce who are demanding certain things that we were not ready for, but more importantly, these millennials as consumers were making far more demands that was driving the transformation of industry, be it an automotive industry or a retail industry or a healthcare industry. Into the millennials, the young people, professionals from 18 to 35 years of age, who were making a difference, who were calling the shots. So we invested significantly in understanding what their aspirations are, both as employees, the company, as well as consumers, and invested in the future of work, which again has given us certain growth options, one within the geographies that we operate in, but much more importantly, because of the smartphone phenomena, we are able to reach all corners of the world through the new technology that's available, primarily using these millennials who are far more passionate about technology, about growth, about managing risk, etc., etc. So it's a combination of making sure that we are on top of the risks, gain control over various things that are directly impacting the business, and invest for the future in a very, very focused manner, particularly investing disproportionately in future technologies, or what we call the Horizon 3 operating models and technologies. So that's essentially what the growth story is about.
I think you talked very interestingly about even in the period of uncertainty, with a very clear and deep understanding of that risk, creating an ability to maintain focus and investments on the medium to long-term growth areas. And you talked about internalizing some of those risks. I think that's a theme I would want to pick up next. From a business and operating model perspective, when you talk about internalizing the risk on one hand, and preparing the organization, for this, Horizon 3 initiatives, what kind of, how are you thinking about governance in this new era to enable on one hand internalizing the risk, at the same time preparing the organization for these Horizon 3 opportunities?
All right. I think the Horizon 3 opportunities are going to fundamentally impact all industries. It's clearly going to impact our industry, the IT services industry also, and we've seen that directly impact us as a company in terms of the expectations, in terms of the people that we work with, etc. Now, for governance, basically the base infrastructure is in place in terms of the requirements, in terms of great values, etc., etc. All that is in place. We are an organization that has been empowering its people right from the very beginning. So to that extent, the values, the governance structures, etc., have permeated well into the deep recesses of the organization. So that's not something that we are particularly concerned about. However, we are concerned about the new breed of young people who are joining in great numbers into our company. While the culture of integrity, our governance culture, etc., can be taught, but at some point we'll have to really worry about, since we are taking so many large number of people, how do we ensure that the culture remains intact, number one. But more importantly, for the new model where there is a lot more development that happens in the non-traditional manner, not on the enterprise side, but much more on the market of the consumer side, we have to have a larger number of small teams working pretty much independently in a very, very entrepreneurial structure. And that's where the risks come, because if you let small groups within the company to be agile, to take independent decisions, to be aggressive and deliver growth, we don't know what kind of risk that we are running into. And that's precisely the reason why we restructured or kind of changed the way we look at the businesses, and we are moving some of the people, including the time that our CEO spends on the newer opportunities. So for example, the CEO spends a lot more time on these newer initiatives, what we call the Horizon 3 initiatives, works with smaller teams much more, teaching them, mentoring them, governing them, than the traditional areas, which is kind of well set. That's how the governance type of issues are managed. But at the same time, we will have to keep them highly entrepreneurial. So we'll have to create a culture of angel investing in new ideas, venture capital that's available for groups within the company that have come up with ideas, and all those structures are beginning to fall into place, exactly like the way you would see other PE companies operating. And these are the plans and the investments that we are making for the next 3 to 5 years, while at the same time not losing sight of the short-term opportunities.
I think the last thing that I want to touch, Lakshmi, is the industry has also seen increase what you call policy and environmental volatility. Be it in terms of tax policy, availability of infrastructure of different types, and that has been sort of a constant buzzword about what will it do to the operating model of the services industry in India. So how have you dealt with that uncertainty and that volatility, and how are you adjusting your operating model to manage that going forward?
Yeah, I think for industry that's a very good point. Our dependence, particularly on external things, more specifically with the government, is something that over the last few years have increased, primarily because earlier we had one simple single regime as far as software export is concerned, which was the STPI regime. Then subsequently there was an overlap with an SEZ regime. Then things started changing. What was planned as part of the SEZ program kept changing year after year in terms of MAT, etc. The second one is infrastructure, particularly the power infrastructure that we require, the industry requires, is something that has not been adequately covered. We are constantly, there is a shortage that everybody is aware of. Third, for our expansion programs, land, another important asset that is required, there is no clear certainty as far as the availability is concerned. So what we decided to do was to again say take control of these things, not depend too much on the external factors. For example, bulk of the land that we try and procure is the land that we procure from private parties, paying market rates, and our need or our desire for owning large pockets of land is just not there. Just enough land for our expansion, rest of it we will lease. So we don't usually go to the government requesting for a land bank. Likewise, on the power front, we are facing some serious challenges. That's a little more complex. We are figuring out ways of making sure that our dependence on a single source of power is minimized, that we diversify the sources so that at any point of time we can feel comfortable that our power requirements are managed. Lastly, on the tax front, tax front is something that we cannot do much about. One of the things that we have been advocating is we do not need any tax break, but we need long-term certainty whatever the tax rates are, and that's clearly the way we would like to see it, because if it keeps changing, that becomes very, very difficult from a planning perspective. If it's at the current level or even if it's at a higher level, that's fine, but once it is fixed, we would like it to remain. It's not just for tax. Anything that is determined by the government, we would like it to be less volatile. At least that way the volatility that we have to deal with can be reduced.
Lakshmi, thanks a lot for your time, for sharing your experiences, and I think these will be very valuable for business leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.